Happy New Year! I hope your 2016 is a wonderful, bright, happy year. With the start of New Year, I thought it would be as good a time as any to reflect and look back at the games that I finished in 2015 and talk about the ones I enjoyed the most. I've actually kept a list throughout the year, and here are the games at the top of that list. Number 10. Human Resource Machine. It's a game that shows how much fun programming can be. I bought it on a whim. I wanted something to play for the channel, and I'd recently read Jared's review, which had me intrigued, and I spent way more time with this game than I ever expected. It's got a slick, funny presentation it introduces with and plays with basic programming concepts that I've seen before, but I've never had to deal with at such a low level, and the optional objectives really helped give legs to my experience. They kept me coming back to those problems, trying to work out how to shorten my response or speed up the execution time. Number 9. Mark of the Ninja. Mark of the Ninja delivers on a stealth power fantasy experience. You can become a master of the shadows, able to strike at will at foes that are completely helpless, and it does this through an interface that gives you exactly the information you need and little you don't. It gives you an arsenal of interesting tools that you can use to adjust the rules to match your playstyle. It brought me such an evil sense of delight, especially when you manage to get one guard to take out all their buddies. I only wish Clay had produced more Mark. Number 8. Transistor. Great soundtrack, great art, an interesting mix of real-time and turn-based play. I enjoyed wandering through the world it presents, trying to understand how things worked, why the heck someone ever would have built this computer system. The power system was especially cool because you had both a narrative reason and a mechanical reward for experimenting with different power combinations, so you could find ones that really fit your playstyle. Number 7. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. This is a game I went into expecting to have a good time. It has a well-established reputation. It's an indie game that looks pretty, that has a really striking design, and a gimmick that no one has really picked up and run into the ground. That whole single-player cooperative game. And it lasts long enough for the journey to be fun and engaging, and not so long that the gimmick runs dry. The ending was personally very affecting for me, and I suspect some of that is due to things in my own past, but I had a great time with it. That's why it's on this list. Number 6. Broken Age. We finally saw the Double Fine adventure draw to a close with the release of Broken Age Act 2, and I then played the game as it was intended. I played it in one weekend, and without that distinct break, come back several months in the middle. The latter part of the game has some really difficult puzzles that are geared around you having notes, and I think that's really a decision that was made by listening to the old school fans that backed it, rather than aiming for an accessible modern game, and that's to Broken Age's detriment, but I still really dig the humor, the art, the music, and I definitely think that at the very least you should check out the documentary about the game's creation. Number 5. Sunless Sea. Sunless Sea has an intriguing setting and a soundtrack to match. I happily binged on this game, sailing across the depths, building up my legacies, exploring the stories found in the various islands underneath. It's a fairly difficult and long game. Because of permadeath, if you make a mistake, you can be set back hours. But if you can muscle past the discouragement that can give you, it's a really rewarding experience. It's also the first time that I made videos about games that weren't Let's Plays. Ranneko sailing tips. They were made to help newcomers find out some aspects of the game that you can easily miss and help those who are struggling. I found them really rewarding to produce, and I was pretty pleased when Veilbetter found them and tweeted about them, and it's got DLC coming out next year, so I'll probably return to this one. Number 4. Shadowrun Hong Kong. Shadowrun is one of my favorite game settings. I love the mix of technology, fantasy, and dystopia that it represents, and I'm always pleased to play around in it when the opportunity arises. I like Dragonfall so much that it managed to take 2 entries in my top 5 games from 2015 list. I find it interesting that it's only in the 3rd Shadowrun game that Harebrained Schemes decided to explore the process of a sinner becoming a runner. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as Dragonfall. I'm not entirely sure why. I really like the diversity of the crew. I really like the retooled Matrix combat, or in fact, less combat focused Matrix, but I just didn't have the same attachment to the hub. I think some of that is because I was clearly subordinate in the hub hierarchy. I had a place, but it was a much lower place than I did in Dragonfall. But I'm pretty keen to get back to it because sometime next year they're meant to release the post-campaign DLC. Number 3, Crypt of the Necrodancer. So this was one of the core games of my daily challenge. So I played it a lot. I played it every day for over half of this year. It takes the basic dungeon crawling concept from your typical roguelike and it sets everything to music. Removes that turn-based system, or at least makes everyone's turns take place at the same time. And it was also in early access when I played it, so it was interesting. I got to track it through those early access stages, slowly seeing new features and characters added and adjusted, and it taught me two things. A good adventurer has a good shovel, and I have a terrible sense of rhythm. And without a good sense of rhythm, you can only get so far. Thanks to the leaderboards, I was able to see that my friends were much better at this game than I was. Number 2, Spelunky. This is the other game that was the core of the Daily Challenge. Combines the procedural generation and difficulty of roguelikes with platforming. It's unrelentingly and unapologetically hard, but it couples that with a tight control scheme and simple enemies whose movements are fairly easily read. There's nothing in the game that's hard to understand, but Spelunky never lets up the pressure, which means that even though all of these enemies you can easily read, you know how they're going to act, they still can lure you into making critical mistakes. Of Spelunky and Crypt of the Necrodancer, I spent much more time with Spelunky. I was better at it, and I enjoyed it more, and I'm pretty sure those two things are quite related. Even now, if I'm undecided on what game I want to play, I'll often fire up Spelunky for a quick game or 3. It's like a nice, comfortable blanket. Just one that will throttle you if you aren't careful. And finally, number 1. My favorite game that I finished in 2015 was Massive Chalice. If you want to predispose me to liking a game, you should get me interested in its development process. I really like finding out how games are made and how the projects are managed. And with Massive Chalice, Double Fine had an incredibly open development process. They had bi-weekly team streams for most of the game, where they discussed design, art, programming, animation, and project decisions and challenges they were facing. They didn't hold back. They showed viewers project documentation and development tools. They even did this when clearly what they were showing were works in progress and tools that were half finished. They also put out a more retrospective piece, which was the Massive Knowledge documentary that's totally worth checking out. As a result, I was really keen to get in and try this game when it entered the beta beta, and I continued to track it through iterations as the cadence and the heroes changed and adapted. Features were refined and introduced, and what I found, even in the beginning, was a rewarding tactical combat game, and a strategic layer where your heroes and time were important resources. XCOM's the obvious comparison for mechanics, but the combat's subtly different because the heavy reliance of melee, the lack of overwatch, and the importance of managing line of sight. I played through Massive Chalice slowly, I played through it quickly, and I've created a huge number of tips videos. I loved the time I spent with this game. I just wish they were making more of it, or that there was an active mod community. So there you have it, the top 10 games I finished with in 2015. If you want to know why a particular game that you liked isn't on the list, it's probably because I either didn't start it or I didn't finish it. For a game to enter this list, I have to have decided I am done with it, generally by either reaching the end or by just deciding that this game, I'm sick of it, I'm done with it. If you have any particular recommendations or games that you think I've really missed out on, please let me know in the comments below. Bye.